The bass line of Billie Jean throbbed through the steel beams of the packed arena like a second heartbeat. 30,000 people clapped in sync, their palms echoing the rhythm that Michael Jackson had made immortal. The stage was a blaze of neon light and smoke, and at its center stood Michael himself. Sequined jacket flashing with every movement, a white-gloved hand slicing the air like a blade. He spun once, twice, and the crowd shrieked as though gravity itself had just bent to his will. Every eye was locked on him. Every scream, every clap, every ounce of energy in that stadium belonged to him. This wasn't just a concert. It was a communion. And then it happened. From somewhere near the middle rows, cutting through the drums, the bass, the roar of 30,000 throats, came a voice. Harsh, slurred, wrong, fraud. You're nothing but a fake. The word slammed into the arena like a stone through glass. For a split second, the music carried on, oblivious, until Michael froze mid-step, his body locked, his head snapping toward the sound. His dancers hesitated, unsure whether to keep moving or stop. One of the backing singers glanced nervously at the band leader. And just like that, the groove collapsed. The music fell silent. The sudden stillness was louder than any note. 30,000 fans held their breath. The spotlight stayed fixed on Michael, his chest rising and falling as he stood in perfect stillness, sequins glittering under the lights. He could feel the heat of the crowd pressing against him, 1,000 whispers swirling through the air. The drunk man wasn't finished. He stood now, swaying on his feet, red-faced, his shirt collar open and damp with sweat. He pointed toward the stage, his voice cracking and booming at once. "You think you're some kind of king?" he slurred. "You ain't nothing. Just a boy dancing in shiny shoes." Gasps rippled through the arena. Some fans hissed. Others shouted back at him, furious. Security in black jackets began pushing their way toward the troublemaker, but Michael raised one hand, palm outward, and froze them in their tracks. 30,000 pairs of eyes saw the gesture. 30,000 hearts skipped in unison. He wasn't calling them off entirely. He was asking for a moment. Michael turned his head slightly, the brim of his fedora shading his eyes. For an instant, nobody knew what he would do. His face betrayed nothing. Inside, though, his pulse hammered against his ribs. He had faced hecklers before, but never like this. Never with the entire engine of a live show roaring at full power only to be stopped cold. A fan near the drunk man shouted, "Shut up! We came to see Michael, not you." The crowd roared in agreement, their anger fusing into a single hostile wave aimed at the heckler. But still Michael stayed silent, unmoving, gloved hand still raised. He lowered the microphone slowly to his lips. His voice, soft but amplified, filled the void. "Everybody okay?" The crowd erupted in a cheer, eager to support him. Michael smiled faintly, but his eyes stayed locked on the heckler. The drunk swayed forward, gripping the edge of his seat. "You hear me, Jackson? You're no legend. You're a joke." His voice cracked, but the alcohol gave him fuel. "Prove you're real. Prove it." Michael tilted his head, studying him the way a panther studies prey. Calm, patient, yet coiled with unspoken energy. Inside the wings, crew members shifted nervously. "We should get him out," one whispered, but the stage manager shook his head. "If Michael says wait, we wait." The tension in the arena thickened. The atmosphere that had been joyful minutes ago was now sharp, electric. It was as though 30,000 people were standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to see whether they would fall or fly. Michael took one step forward. The sound of his heel clicking against the stage floor echoed like a gunshot. Another step. The lights followed him, locking onto his figure as he moved toward the edge of the stage, closer to the heckler's section. The man straightened slightly, emboldened by the attention. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted again, "Come down here, Michael. Come down here and be a man for once." The word stung, not because Michael doubted himself, but because they carried the weight of every insult he had endured since boyhood. Too soft, too strange, too different. For a split second, memory flashed. Jeers outside the gates, tabloids calling him fragile, people who thought fame made him untouchable. But here he was, under the blinding light, and he knew something they didn't. He knew the stage was his battlefield, and music was his weapon. Michael stopped at the edge of the stage, directly above the heckler. He looked down. The man's face was red and twisted with drink, his eyes glassy but defiant. Around him, fans were shifting uncomfortably, shouting at him to sit down, some begging Michael to ignore him and go on. Michael leaned into the mic again, his voice low, almost intimate, yet carried by the speakers into every corner of the arena. "You paid good money to be here tonight, didn't you?" The heckler blinked, thrown off by the question. He hesitated, then nodded clumsily. "Damn right I did." Michael's lips curved into the faintest smile. "So why not enjoy it?" The crowd cheered, a release of tension, but the man wasn't satisfied. He waved his arms wildly, almost losing balance. "Because you're not real. You hide behind your music, behind your lights and smoke. You can't even face a real man." The words hung in the air like smoke. The crowd booed viciously. Some chanted, "Throw him out, throw him out." But Michael raised his hand again, silencing them with a single gesture. His eyes locked on the hecklers, sharp and unwavering. 1,000 cameras flashed as fans tried to capture the moment. For a heartbeat, it felt like time itself paused. Then Michael whispered into the mic, his tone steady, deliberate. "Maybe tonight we find out who's real." The arena gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. Security looked at each other, uncertain. The heckler grinned stupidly, not realizing the trap he was stepping into. Michael straightened, his silhouette commanding, sequins burning like stars. "But we do it my way." The crowd erupted, half cheering, half screaming in confusion. What did he mean? What was he about to do? Michael didn't move another inch. He simply stood there, the embodiment of control, letting the tension simmer. The drunk man swayed, still shouting, but now his voice was drowned out by the roar of the arena. Every eye, every heart, every soul in that place was fixed on one truth. The king of pop had been challenged, and the world was about to see how he would answer. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. The air in the arena felt heavier now, as though 30,000 people had been holding the same breath for too long. Michael stood motionless at the edge of the stage, the spotlight crowning him in a halo of gold. Below him, the drunk man swayed like a tree in the wind, arms flailing, words tumbling from his mouth in clumsy bursts. "You can't fool me, Jackson," he shouted. "You think you're some kind of king? All you do is dance around and squeal into a mic." Boos rained down from the crowd. Fans twisted in their seats, glaring daggers at the intruder. A woman near him hissed, "Sit down," while another man shoved his shoulder. But the heckler, fueled by alcohol and the adrenaline of being the center of attention, only grew louder. Michael's face was unreadable, a mask carved in silence. But behind that stillness, his mind raced. He could feel the fragile fabric of the concert tearing. One wrong move, and the entire night could collapse into chaos. Yet he also sensed something deeper in the man's words, a bitterness that wasn't just about him, but about something broken inside the heckler himself. Michael stepped back from the edge of the stage. The audience groaned, thinking he might retreat, that he might ignore the man and try to push the show forward. But instead, Michael raised the microphone again. "Why are you so angry?" His voice, soft yet firm, echoed to the speakers, reaching every corner of the arena. The drunk blinked, caught off guard. For a moment, the mask of hostility cracked. But then he sneered. "Because you're a fraud, man. You hide behind dancers, lights, costumes. That ain't real. I want to see the real Michael Jackson. Show me you're more than a puppet." Gasps rippled through the stands. Some fans booed, others screamed for security to drag him out. But Michael shook his head gently, his gloved hand raised once more. "I don't hide," he said. "I give. Every night, I give everything I have." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. And yet, the drunk laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Then prove it. Right here, right now. No tricks. No band. Just you and me." The audience exploded in noise. Some were outraged at the disrespect. Others thrilled by the unfolding drama. Reporters in the press section fumbled with cameras, sensing history in the making. Michael tilted his head, studying the man. The corner of his mouth curled, not in amusement, but in something deeper, resolve. "You want real?" Michael asked softly, almost whispering. "You'll get real." The spotlight followed him as he slowly peeled off his sequin jacket. Gasps echoed. He let it fall to the stage floor with a soft metallic clink. The white shirt beneath clung to him, damp with sweat, simple and unadorned. The image was stark. No glitter, no armor, just Michael. The audience roared, sensing something monumental was about to unfold. The drunk raised his fist in the air as if he'd won something. "That's it. That's what I want." But Michael wasn't finished. He signaled to the band with a flick of his fingers. They stopped tuning. They stopped moving. Silence. Then, with his other hand, he gestured for the lights. One by one, the stage lights dimmed until only a single white spotlight remained, pouring down on like a beam from heaven. The arena sank into shadow, the audience illuminated only by the faint glow of camera flashes. It was now just him and the heckler. Michael took a deep breath, lowered the mic, and spoke into stillness. "You think music is fake? You think my soul is fake?" His voice cracked, not with weakness, but with raw emotion. "I've lived my life on this stage. Every pain, every joy, every breath I've ever had, I've given it to the people who believe. To them, to you, even to you." The drunk faltered. His smile slipped. For the first time, he looked uncertain, even shaken. The crowd, electrified, roared in support of Michael. Michael raised one hand, silencing them again. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Heckler. "You came here to tear me down. But I won't fight you. That's not who I am. I'll show you who I am the only way I know how." He snapped his fingers. The band leader nodded, and a single spotlight illuminated the piano at the corner of the stage. Slowly, almost reverently, Michael walked across the stage, every step deliberate, his figure gliding through the half-dark. He sat at the piano, his gloved hand resting on the keys. The arena was dead silent. Then he began to play. It wasn't one of his usual hits, not a radio anthem or a chart-topping groove. Instead, he played something simple, almost fragile, a few chords tender and unguarded. His voice, stripped of production, floated pure and raw over the microphone. "Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking." The audience gasped. The song, "Smile," one of Michael's most beloved, heartfelt numbers, filled a cavernous space like a prayer. His voice cracked in places, but he didn't hide it. He leaned into it, letting every imperfection become proof of his humanity. The drunk man's arms dropped. His eyes widened, glassy not just from alcohol now, but from something else, recognition. This wasn't smoke and mirrors. This wasn't tricks. This was real. Michael sang directly to him, his eyes never leaving the heckler's face. It was as though the entire arena vanished, and the only two people who existed were the king of pop and the broken man who had challenged him. Fans began to cry. Some clutched their chests. The raw intimacy of the performance cut through the chaos and wrapped itself around 30,000 hearts at once. By the time Michael reached the final line, "You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile," the drunk man had sunk back into a seat, hands trembling. Tears streaked down his face. The fight drained from him. The arena erupted. A tidal wave of applause, screams, tears, and chant of "Michael! Michael!" thundered through the rafters. Michael, still seated at the piano, bowed his head. His chest rose and fell, his shoulders trembling with the weight of what he had just given. He looked up again, his face wet with sweat and something more, relief. Then he stood, walked back to the center of the stage, and raised the mic again. "You wanted real," he said, voice steady now, filled with quiet fire. "That was real." The crowd roared, so loud the ground seemed to quake. And yet, Michael wasn't done. He looked at the heckler one last time, his voice gentle, almost kind. "You came here angry. But maybe what you need isn't a fight. Maybe it's a song. Maybe it's love." The man collapsed into his seat, sobbing openly. Security stood nearby, waiting for Michael's cue, but he shook his head. "Let him stay," he whispered. The band leader looked at him, wide-eyed. "What next?" Michael turned back to the audience, a glimmer of mischief and purpose in his eyes. "Now," he said into the mic, "we dance." The crowd erupted again, thunderous and electric. The drunk had demanded proof, and Michael had just turned his pain into poetry. But nobody in that arena knew yet. The night was only beginning. The arena was still vibrating from the aftershocks of Michael's stripped-down performance. Fans were on their feet, hands raw from clapping, cheeks wet with tears. For a moment, it seemed like the show might reset, that Michael would glide back into choreography. The band would erupt, and the concert would resume its carefully rehearsed rhythm. But Michael wasn't finished. He stood at the center of the stage, chest heaving, curls damp against his forehead, sequin jacket abandoned on the floor behind him. His eyes tracked the heckler, still slumped in his seat, half sobbing, half defiant. Security hovered nearby, itching to escort the man out. Michael lifted a single hand, palm outward. Not yet. The audience saw it. They gasped. They knew what that meant. He was going to deal with this himself. Michael leaned into the microphone, his voice calm but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. "You wanted to be seen, right?" The drunk blinked, startled. "You wanted to prove something tonight?" The man nodded unsteadily, as though his body no longer obeyed him fully. "Then come here," Michael said. "Come to the stage." The arena detonated. Screams, gasps, shouts. Half the audience begging Michael not to, the other half screaming in anticipation. It was insanity. Who invited a belligerent drunk onto their stage in front of 30,000 people. But Michael Jackson wasn't anyone. He was the king of pop. The drunk man staggered forward, jostling knees and elbows as he pushed his way down the aisle. Security tried to intercept him, but Michael raised both hands, commanding, "Let him through." "Michael, don't do this." A stagehand hissed from the wings, clutching a headset. But Michael never looked away from the man stumbling toward him. His expression was unreadable, part challenge, part compassion, part unshakable calm. As the heckler reached the barricade, fans shrank back, some trying to shield themselves as if his anger might spill over onto them. A security guard boosted him up reluctantly, and for a terrifying second he nearly fell back into crowd. But Michael stepped forward, extending his gloved hand like a lifeline. Gasps sliced through the air as Michael pulled the man onto the stage. The contrast was surreal. Michael, a figure of poise and light, standing inches away from a sweaty, staggering stranger. The drunk's shirt was half untucked, his shoes scuffed, his eyes bloodshot. Under the glare of the stage lights, every imperfection screamed louder than words. Michael stood perfectly still. The drunk swayed, blinking against the spotlight, disoriented by the sheer immensity of 30,000 eyes fixed on him. "You wanted real?" Michael said, his voice echoing. "Here it is." The crowd erupted into a wave of screams, some ecstatic, some horrified. Cameras flashed like lightning. The drunk tried to speak, raising the microphone Michael had handed him. His words came out as a jumble. You can't, you're just..." But nothing landed. His bravado melted under the weight of the moment. The audience jeered. Some shouted, "Boo!" Others laughed nervously. The heckler's cheeks reddened as he fumbled with the mic, his voice cracking into incoherent slurs. He looked small now, exposed. Michael took a slow step toward him. "You want to show the world you're stronger than me?" he asked softly. The man nodded, confused but desperate. "Then do what I do." Michael gestured toward the band. "Sing." The arena went berserk. Half the audience laughed, half screamed in disbelief. A heckler sing? Against Michael Jackson? It was madness. The drunk shook his head. I didn't come to sing." Michael tilted his head, almost smiling. "But this is my stage. My rules." He turned the band, snapping his fingers. The drummer tapped a soft beat. The keyboardist filled in gentle chords. Michael motioned toward the man. "Go ahead. Show them your truth." The heckler froze. The crowd howled with anticipation. For a moment, the man looked like he might bolt off the stage. But the alcohol in his veins and the crushing spotlight pinned him in place. He lifted the mic again, opened his mouth, and let out a garbled attempt at melody. Flat, slurred, lost. The arena exploded in laughter. Thousands of voices jeered. "Sit down." "Boo." The man faltered, lowering the mic. His knees shook. His face crumpled with humiliation. And then Michael did something nobody expected. He stepped to the man's side and clapped in rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. His voice soared, smooth and effortless, cutting through the chaos. Don't stop till you get enough. The band caught on instantly, locking into the groove. The crowd screamed in recognition. Michael nudged the heckler with his shoulder, urging him to follow along. The man, dazed, lifted the mic again. His voice cracked hideously, but Michael sang louder, covering him, wrapping his broken notes in gold. "Keep on. With the force, don't stop till you get enough." The audience, stunned at first, began clapping, then cheering, then singing along. 30,000 voices surged like a wave, drowning the heckler's failures in pure joy. For the first time all night, the drunk man stopped fighting. His shoulders sagged. His voice softened. He looked at Michael, confused, almost childlike, as if to ask, "Why are you helping me?" Michael leaned in close, whispering just loud enough for the mic to catch. "Because everybody deserves a song." The words reverberated through the stadium, silencing laughter and jeers. The crowd shifted. Suddenly, they weren't mocking anymore. They were witnessing a transformation. The heckler dropped his head, voice breaking. He mumbled into the mic, I can't." Michael wrapped an arm around him, steadying him. "Then let me." He lifted the mic high, belted the chorus with all the fire of his soul, and the arena exploded into the loudest eruption of the night. The band roared, the crowd thundered, and for a few unforgettable minutes, Michael turned a humiliating confrontation into a performance so powerful it shook the rafters. The heckler, now trembling, leaned against him, tears streaking his face. The fight was gone. All that remained was a broken man caught in the light of grace. When the song ended, Michael held him steady and whispered into the mic once more, "Still think I'm hiding?" The crowd roared, so loud the floor itself seemed to shake. And in that moment, the drunk wasn't an enemy anymore. He was part of the show. The echoes of the chorus still hung in the rafters like thunder, vibrating through steel and bone. Michael stood center stage, one arm still around the trembling drunk fan. The man's shirt clung to his chest, soaked in sweat, his face streaked with tears and humiliation. 30,000 people stood frozen in disbelief, phones flashing, mouths open, hearts hammering. What had begun as an interruption had become a moment no one in that arena would ever forget. But it wasn't over. Michael released the man gently, stepping back, so the spotlight bathed them both in white fire. The contrast was blinding. Michael, sharp, poised, commanding, sequins glittering like stars. The drunk, hunched, shaking, every flaw exposed. The stage itself seemed to draw a line between chaos and control, light and shadow. The heckler raised the mic again, as if searching for one last shred of defiance. His voice cracked. You ain't. The words dissolved in his throat. The audience booed loudly this time, a tidal wave of frustration, anger, and contempt. Some fans hurled insults. "Get off the stage. You're not worthy. Michael doesn't need this." The drunk shrank under the noise, eyes darting like a trapped animal. His knees buckled slightly. He was breaking. And then Michael did the unthinkable. He stepped forward, gently took the microphone from the man's shaking hand, and lowered it. He placed his gloved hand over the man's chest, right above his heart. The entire arena gasped as Michael leaned in, his voice calm but amplified. "You're not my enemy." Silence. Absolute silence. Not a scream, not a clap, not a whisper. Michael turned his head toward the crowd, his curls falling into his face. "We all came here tonight to feel something real, to share something together. And sometimes," he paused, glancing back at the drunk man, "the ones who fight the hardest are the ones hurting the most." A murmur rippled across the arena. Fans lowered their cameras, watching now not as spectators, but as witnesses to something raw and human. Michael walked a slow circle around the man, the way a conductor commands an orchestra with silence before a note. He raised his hand to band. The drummer tapped a soft heartbeat rhythm. The bass added a low hum. Michael turned back to the heckler. You wanted me to prove I'm real? Then let's show everyone what's real in you. He snapped his fingers. The lights shifted. Instead of blinding strobes and fireworks, the arena dimmed to a warm, golden glow. It felt smaller suddenly, intimate, like 30,000 people had been drawn into a single living room. The band played a gentle progression. Michael lifted the mic, then handed it back to the man. Say something, he urged softly. Anything. The heckler froze. His lips trembled. For a terrifying moment, it seemed like he would collapse under the weight of expectation. But then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, he croaked. I don't know who I am anymore. Gasps. Shouts. Some fans covered their mouths in shock. Michael didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his presence radiating calm. Then tonight, you found your voice. He turned to the band. A chord change, tender, rising. Michael began to hum, deep and soulful. The crowd recognized the melody instantly. Man in the mirror. The arena erupted into cheers. But Michael didn't launch into the full song. Instead, he sang only the first lines, slowly, deliberately, his voice cracking with emotion. I'm going to make a change for once in my life. He stopped, lowering the mic toward the man. The drunk stared at it like it was fire. The audience screamed encouragement. Sing it. Do it. But he shook his head. Michael whispered, just loud enough for the mic to catch. Don't be afraid. You're not alone. The man raised the mic with trembling hands. His voice was weak, broken, but he managed. It's going to feel real good. The arena exploded. Fans screamed, clapped, cried. It didn't matter that he was off-key or that his words cracked. What mattered was that he sang. Michael joined him, wrapping his voice around the man's ragged tone, transforming it into harmony. The band swelled. The crowd sang along, and 30,000 voices turned the arena into a cathedral sound. The heckler dropped the mic, sobbing. Michael caught him, held him upright, and whispered into his ear. The audience couldn't hear, but cameras caught the way the man nodded, his face crumpling into something almost childlike. Then Michael turned back to the crowd, raised his free hand like a preacher calling for unity. This, he declared, his voice ringing like thunder, is what music is for. The arena erupted in a roar so loud it rattled the steel rafters. Fans screamed his name, stamping their feet, clapping in rhythm. Michael stood tall, the man leaning against him, utterly undone. He looked down at him again, voice soft, tender. You matter, no matter what you've lost, no matter how far you've fallen. Tonight you matter. The man collapsed into his knees, clutching Michael's leg, sobbing uncontrollably. Security moved in, but Michael shook his head again. Not yet. He pointed toward the crowd. Don't boo him. Don't hate him. Show him love. The arena transformed. The boos turned into chants, then applause, then thunderous cheering. 30,000 people lifted their arms, not in anger, but in celebration of a man who had been broken but was now seen. The heckler looked up, stunned. Tears glistened in his eyes. Why are they clapping for me? Michael crouched down, lowering himself to meet the man at eye level. He took his face gently in his hands. Because I asked them to, because love is stronger than hate. The crowd roared so loud it felt like the arena itself might collapse. Michael helped the man back to his feet. The spotlight followed him as he guided the heckler toward the side of the stage, whispering something into his ear. The man nodded through his tears, and with security's quiet help, he stepped down into the shadows. Michael returned to the center of the stage, drenched in sweat, his chest heaving. He spread his arms wide, as though embracing every soul in the room. That, he said, voice trembling but powerful, is why I do this. To heal, to unite, to remind us who we are. The audience erupted into chants of Michael. Michael, so loud it drowned out everything else. The arena held its breath, but in that breath was unity, compassion, and awe. And everyone knew the final act was still to come. The chants of Michael, Michael, thundered through the arena like an earthquake, a sound so massive it seemed to bend the air itself. 30,000 people were on their feet, stomping, clapping, screaming until their voices broke. The stage lights pulsed in waves of gold and white, bathing Michael in brilliance. But even as the celebration roared, there was a sense of unfinished business hanging in the air. The drunk fan had been led gently to the wings, transformed from a hostile challenger into a sobbing man who had just been seen, really seen, for the first time in years. Yet the crowd, though moved, craved release. They had witnessed tension, conflict, vulnerability. Now they wanted triumph. Michael stood in the center of the stage, sweat dripping down his temples, shirt clinging to his chest, curls plastered to his forehead. He lifted the microphone slowly, and instantly, the arena hushed. It was like watching 30,000 candles snuffed out in an instant. "Tonight," he said, voice trembling with raw emotion, "we saw what anger can do and what love can do." The crowd roared again, some weeping openly, others nodding in agreement. Michael's voice cut through them like lightning. "But this isn't just my show. It's our show. It's our chance to prove that no matter how dark it gets, we can shine brighter." A chord struck from the band, slow, deliberate, unmistakable. The first notes of Man in the Mirror swelled across the arena. Fans screamed, knowing instantly what was coming. Michael closed his eyes, his body swaying with the rhythm, and began, "I'm going to make a change for once in my life." The crowd sang every word with him, their voices crashing together into one massive, unified choir. The drunk man, now sitting backstage, could be seen on the big screens, head in his hands, overwhelmed. Michael sang harder, stronger, his voice carrying the weight of not just a song, but a sermon. The chorus hit like a tidal wave. Michael dropped his mic to the audience, letting their 30,000 voices roar back at him. "I'm starting with the Man in the Mirror." The sound was deafening. Goosebumps rippled across the arena. People who had come for a pop concert were now part of something sacred, something alive, something that felt like history being written in real time. Michael's energy built with every verse, his body convulsing with passion. He stomped, spun, cried out, pouring every ounce of his being into performance. By the bridge, he fell to his knees, head tilted back, arms outstretched, screaming the words not as lyrics but as truth. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. The arena erupted into chaos. Tears, screams, applause. People hugged strangers. Some dropped to their knees in the stands. Security guards along the barricades wiped their eyes, tried to keep composure. And then came the moment that would live in legend. Michael rose slowly, chest heaving, eyes blazing. He raised his gloved hand high in the air, and the music cut. Dead silence. 30,000 people froze, their voices caught mid-lyric. He spoke into the stillness. "To the man who stood against me tonight." The audience gasped, whipping their heads toward the side of the stage where the drunk had been led. Cameras zoomed in on him. He looked up, stunned, as Michael's words washed over the arena. "You reminded us all that sometimes the ones who fight the loudest are the ones hurting the deepest." The crowd erupted in applause, many cheering for the man who had, moments ago, been their villain. Michael pointed toward him. "But tonight, you showed courage. Courage to stand here. Courage to face yourself. And for that, we honor you." The arena thundered with applause, louder than ever. Fans stomped so hard the floor quaked. The man broke down again, burying his face in his hands, overcome. Michael turned back to the audience. His eyes gleamed with fire, his voice rising. "And now we finish this together." The band slammed back into the chorus of Man in the Mirror. Michael moonwalked across the stage, spinning into a blur of sequins and sweat. The audience went insane. He beckoned, and 30,000 voices screamed the lyrics with him. "I'm starting with the Man in the Mirror." The screens lit up with close-ups of fans, crying, screaming, holding their hearts. The energy was seismic, a surge of unity so powerful it felt as though the arena itself might lift off the ground. Michael danced with fury, every movement sharper than a blade, every spin tighter, every stomp heavier. His body became an instrument of release. channeling the storm of tension into catharsis. On the final chorus, he dropped to his knees again, clutching the mic with both hands, his voice cracking with raw exhaustion. Make that change. The band hit the final chord. Like a thunderclap, fireworks erupted across the stage. Confetti rained from the rafters. Spotlights swept the crowd as 30,000 people screamed themselves hoarse. Michael collapsed forward, hands on the stage, chest heaving. For a long moment, he stayed there, trembling, drained. Then, slowly he stood, arms spread wide, head bowed. The ovation was deafening. The sound of 30,000 souls pouring gratitude, love, and awe into a single man. Michael raised the mic one last time. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried to the farthest corner of the arena. This is who I am. This is who we are. Love is stronger than hate. Always. The crowd screamed, cried, chanted his name. Some threw roses onto the stage. Others held up signs reading, "We love you, Michael." Backstage, the drunk man wept uncontrollably, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. He hadn't been thrown out. He hadn't been humiliated. He had been embraced. Scene. Change. Michael took a step back, raised his gloved fist into the air, and let the spotlight burn him into silhouette. It was a final image seared into memory. Not just a king of pop, but a man who had faced anger, chaos, and pain and turned it into something transcendent. The arena shook not from the weight of conflict, but from the roar of unity. And that night went down in legend. The night a drunk fan faced Michael Jackson mid-show, and what Michael did next shook the world. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.